When you buy business, you essentially bring complexities. The day after the acquisition, you're actually minus. You just created more problem. So you have to be extremely more thoughtful than even I thought. Like I've lived through an acquisition, but from the seller perspective. And entrepreneurship, sometimes you have to get a little bit of ego and say, oh, I'm better than the other guys. Like otherwise you won't take the risk. It's crazy. Like the amount of complexity of bringing like new culture, new system, new supplier, new setup. So we had to be deliberate and building a system where you can do plug and play without dismantling anything. Otherwise, you're essentially destroying value from day one.
Welcome to $100 Million Blueprint. We're your hosts, Jonathan Ferrari and Neil Cuggy, the founders of Goodfood.
In each episode, we share lessons learned from being owners and co-owners in businesses valued over $290 million. No fluff, no corporate jargon, just actionable advice that works.
Welcome to $100 Million Blueprint, the show where we go inside the minds of entrepreneurs who've scaled without selling out. We're not here for hype, hacks, or hustle culture. We're here for the real talk and how to grow with clarity, conviction, and a whole lot of guts. Today, our guest is Alexandre Renaud, co-founder and CEO of Nolk, a company that's quietly built one of the fastest growing house of brands by doing things very differently. Super excited for the conversation today. If you're currently building a business in a storm facing slower growth, tighter budgets, pressure to cut corners, this one's definitely going to hit home. So thank you very much, Alex, and welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Neil. Appreciate you having me here.
Awesome. Would love to kind of jump right in with you and get into a little bit of your background and story and how you kind of got into, you've been an entrepreneur your whole life from my understanding. It's not a lot of people that go and say, I want to start a business that buys other businesses and puts together a house of brands. So maybe if you could just kind of start from the early days and how the idea kind of came to fruition.
So as you said, like I've been a serial entrepreneur pretty much all my life, coming from an small entrepreneur family as well. So that's probably where I got my early hook. I started Nolk in 2018. At that time, like I just finished the year and a half period in my time at Shutterstock, like where me and my business partner, Francois, we sold premiumbeat.com back in 2015. So after that, like we start doing investments, minority investment there and there. I'm more of a builder than let's say a passive investor. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is it takes a lot of time to build a business. I would say first idea was to acquire existing business, start to scout the market, see what's out there. And most of the time in small and medium-sized business, if you buy an existing business, you have to become kind of the founder yourself. So it's more complicated, but then we get acquainted with a lot of e-commerce founders on the market that scale to a certain point and it's certain ceiling and problem. And then you speak to one, you speak to a second one, the third one, and then there's that kind of commonality of challenge that you see across the board. So you say, that's probably a great space to consolidate. You probably know, like by that time in 2018, it was clear to everyone that DTC was not like SaaS company. So the big multiple funding period was pretty much dry. So there's a lot of brand that will be out there in the market looking for capital or exit potential. So really there was that thesis of a market ready to consolidate. E-commerce as a huge space. E-commerce business can transfer pretty easily. Also, it's kind of transparent for the customer. Like you can switch the business ownership without changing the DNA of the brand and how it communicates like to the customer. And then you had a couple of personal elements to it. As we do as entrepreneurs, so say, okay, let's build a portfolio. What's the thesis behind the portfolio? It's okay, what's going to be true for consumer business 10 years from now? So if we project ourselves in 2028, how people will consume by then. So we have that thesis of impact. For lack of a better word, I'm using sustainability, but it's so bloated as a term. I would say more what the customer was looking for at that point was thoughtful production, maybe none made in Asia. Already at that time, it was Trump version 1. You had a lot of anti-China happening for the first time. So we're looking for a brand that have alternative supply and more local, thoughtful production and better material in the end. And lastly, the third piece is the tech component. I'm coming from tech world, so going to do portfolio of e-commerce business with an impact component, but we're going to use tech as our unique advantage in the portfolio, and that's how we get started.
That's amazing, and sounds like the hopefully the 10-year thesis is materializing more and more every day. Like it feels very much on trend on the big macro stuff, which John and I are huge proponents of.
Maybe Alex, you want to tell us a little bit about what has played out in terms of the original thesis and what is happening that might be different than the original thesis?
Right. So super interesting, specifically when it's been more than 6 years now, so you can already start to reflect a little bit more. I think on the macro thesis, we're still on it. It's valid. So DTC brand e-commerce, probably more than ever now, consolidation is a valid phase for that space in the market. The impact component, super valid again, even more with the geopolitics these days, I would say. And the tech with the AI revolution makes a ton of sense. So on the macro level, we're still checking the box even more. So we were not off. That's great. Now it's on the execution. That's always where the devil is, as you know. Originally, the way to operationalize all that was we went for centralization as a starting point. Doesn't work, at least for us, or for the type of brand that we're having.
What were you trying to centralize, Alex?
Right. Let's say marketing, trying to centralize marketing, operation, finance, everything. So you would buy a brand and then say, okay, now you're no longer part of, say, Rachel, you're part of a larger marketing team. But even if you hire the best person, in a specific, let's say, marketing role, growth marketing role, the context switch of changing market, customer segmentation and all that, makes that you actually losing your edge of having the best person. You're better having an interns or someone early in her career, but 120% dedicated to a specific customer segment. So after a couple of years of centralization, we had that federation approach where each brand has its own P&L and is really dedicated to their customer. And the only thing we centralize really that works in the end is finance, tech, data. Data is something where you can add a lot of value as well. And certain element of, I would say, sales channels sometimes, like Amazon or sales, because those are more mechanic, but all the rest essentially at the brand level to keep the brand DNA. So that was one of the best learning, I would say, or the biggest learning. Second one is we discovered we could do cross-sell. But that one is positive, across the brand. That was not necessarily part of the thesis originally. Although we have a suspicion that we could open sales channel, but if you're thoughtful about it, in the communication, people actually crave to discover other similar brand, if done properly. So that has been something a pro, I would say, or a good discovery from the early day. And lastly, when you buy business, you essentially bring complexity. So the day after the acquisition, you're actually minus, and your synergy, you just created more problem. So you have to be extremely more thoughtful than even I thought. I've lived through an acquisition, but from the seller perspective. So you always come an entrepreneurship. Sometimes you have to get a little bit of ego and say, oh, I'm better than the other guys. Otherwise you won't take the risk. So, but I will say that it's crazy. The amount of complexity you're having of bringing new culture, new system, new supplier, new setup. So we had to be deliberate and building a system where you can do plug and play without dismantling anything. Otherwise you're essentially destroying value from day one, and then it takes some time to actually get the synergy you're looking for. Fortunately enough, we developed a playbook that we can do that plug and play, but it took some time.
And so it sounds like cost synergies, essentially it turned out that the cost synergies are not really the play here, right? Maybe there's the finance piece that you mentioned, but the cost synergies are not really the play. So how do you help the portfolio companies, and like how are you bringing these 14 brands together to turn into something that is more than each of them individually?
And maybe, Alex, at the same time, we could walk through some of the brands and examples of some of those playbook integrations, so people get a sense of what brands that you're actually running today.
Yeah, I would say there is certain element of cost synergy, but it's less. Cost synergy are finite. There's so much you can actually deliver. So it's, unless you're buying a mature business and you're not looking to grow it at all and just essentially freeing up margin and trying to sit on it like the private equity playbook, it's not really the right play to do if you want to build like more value. But there is still some opportunity, but it's not the best one. Where you get the most synergy is when you cater, as mentioned, like more positive synergy or cross-sell elements, and cross-pollination of certain best practice and tools. For example, we've acquired like 2 years ago, like Rose Boreal, which is called Rose Bouddha at that time. Like we rebrand to avoid some of the cancellation culture that exists like surrounding the word Buddha, like for Boreal. It's also like better fitting like with the community. And the Rose customer, actually, like within 6 months of exposing like Rachel, we were able to increase Rachel customer discovering like Rose Boreal, like bring 20%, a little bit more than that, like even. So creating, that's actually to that day, like the biggest synergy is within the same category. So in fashion, we've achieved between 20 to 25% of cross-pollination, like of customer discovery. For the audience, Rachel is essentially a tight and first layer business apparel, and Rose Boreal is more like lifestyle, legging, yoga, activewear. But both are complementary. So the idea is that you need both in your wardrobe. So if you're the same customer, presented differently, it's actually beautiful. We could say the same with Opposite Wall and Ergon Office, like in the home space, and Kana. Kana is our kitchen brand. Ergon Office is actually like all home office, furniture, and Opposite Wall is our poster frames and wall decoration business. Those three, similar thing. You get a customer that will voyage across the tree, having like similar aesthetic and similar positioning in terms of premiumness, the story behind the product, how is the thoughtful design and the modernist approach. Kana is a more modern approach take on, let's say, something like a Creuset on Ergon Office side, like is really a modern, more Scandinavian, I would say, home office setup, and same with Opposite Wall, like in terms of modern art. So that's the first big thing that we're doing between the brand. The second thing from the back end that we're doing is normalizing the data across everything. So one consistent stuff, except for maybe brand that are making, let's say, 30 to 40 million plus, but below that, like it's always crappy in terms of where the data reside. It's not normalized. They might have some stuff on Shopify, other thing on Amazon, something in Excel, a lot of Excel, like, or Google Sheet everywhere. So difficult to get a coherent view of what's happening. And every business is also looking at the business from a different angle. Gross margin doesn't mean the same thing everywhere. And some don't operate with the notion of contribution margin or economic contribution either. Like, so one thing we do is normalizing the data across all channel, sales channel, acquisition channel, marketing, and operation channel as well. And then we can get a unified view. Like today I can say, okay, this is my performance. If Nolk was a single brand, but it's an amalgamation of 14, and I can know like yesterday how much contribution margin I did, like gross or revenue or so on. What's my return on advertising? We have 8 online acquisition channel that we're tracking. We can build a proper ROAS. So when a brand join, let's say for example Revent, like when they join, great business, been a great success for us. Like Revent from Portland, like we're making it possible for people to repair the sunglasses, like with replaceable glass. We also introduced like a new sunglasses that people can repair infinitely. So when we acquired Revent, their revenue was growing, but they were making less and less money every year. Because at some point you get buried under the data and you don't know where to optimize. So one thing that we did is say, okay, like once you amalgamate all that data, say where you got the opportunity essentially to adjust your ads to increase your unit economics and also optimizing your pricing. So there's certain thing that price hasn't been changed for, let's say, 5 years, 6 years. You're leaving money on the table in certain area. Other product like need probably to be sell lower to increase velocity, but most of them like increase a little bit more because you can. You still have some flexibility on the pricing. So just with that, we've been able to triple the profit, like, and restore like growth and align both revenue and operation in a nice way. So it's that the kind of thing that we're making collectively, like cross-sell, data optimization, ad optimization, I would say are typically the most important thing that we're performing.
And how much internally do you have to fight the other forces that are working for centralization versus decentralization? It's something we think. So it's something we think a lot about in our own acquisition, in our own business, and even having multiple facilities across the country. People are always with very positive intent. People are always trying to say like, oh, we're gonna cost synergize this, or we're gonna save. On paper it looks great. We're gonna save this. But in reality, it's that complexity that you're talking about, right? It's like it takes a couple turns to see, well, it looks good on a spreadsheet or it looks good on a PowerPoint, but when you actually start to execute against it, there's all these extra layers of getting the customer the order. So how much internal battle do you guys have around that and discussion? Because it's something that we definitely feel.
I think there's always a bad level of tension and a good level of tension, but I think it cannot be without tension because there's a conversation obviously that's happening between like parts and the whole. I think it's just a natural way, and that is creative in itself when it's harnessed the right way. The bad way is when it starts to play a little bit more politics and, oh, we're gonna centralize just because I'm the big unit and we're gonna do it, and then you can start to again, complexify thing or simplify, but then suddenly you're losing in efficiency and thing costs more essentially than the efficiency that it brings. That's what we experience in terms of centralization sometimes. So you get efficiency, but it costs you more to actually get it. So it's a net loss. On the other end, like if you leave fully free form, then you're missing opportunity to essentially drive that efficiency. So you kind of need to create a narrative or cultivate something or a process where there is space for people to essentially have that creative discussion. Budget is a good way to do it. Like every unit and the group has a P&L. So there's no cost center. Like everybody needs to generate everybody is generating something. Nobody is a pure cost. You're part of the team because you're generating something. So you need to be able to quantify it. And everything can be quantified like one way or another. Once you do that, then we can have a conversation. Like, oh, is your contribution happening? Where do you need some help? Is there opportunity essentially to increase benefit globally? That's how we do it. Like there's that concept of Nolk Nation that we have, saying that there's multiple brand and we're part of the same nation, but we're all city-state, province, state, whatever, how you want to call it. But it's actually, it's an effective model. I mean, it works in politics and for country. So it works also internally, like in the business. But it's business. So at the end of the day, as executive, we need to call the shot on certain thing. And if we're not able to get, or team are able to get to a resolution, then we have to have conviction and call a shot on something. And sometimes there's people that say, oh, I didn't get my investment like the other guy did, like, but collectively for the group, we know that's where we're going to have the highest yield, and this surplus is my next essentially win. So that's how we're trying to cultivate that thing. Otherwise, it can quickly become a bitter fight, like, oh, you got resource, fixed buy mentality type of thing, which is the worst. Like people thinking it's a fixed buy and they just need to play elbows out like a little bit more. That's the worst. Culture, system, process.
Yeah, exactly. And earning your capital is we've been exposed to some executives from much larger businesses where they have, similar portfolio approaches to Nolk. And you think, with, very healthy EBITDA and free cash flow margins as an entrepreneur trying to grind your way through, the different plateaus of sales and profitability, you're like, wow, and if you had $1 billion of EBITDA a year, it must be so easy. And the answer is no, everyone's fighting for capital and it doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter how big your division is or how big your opportunity is. It's the same conversation. And I haven't run into anybody that says it's a free, there's ways to grow the pie, but there's no free money in any of the businesses. So it seems like healthy tension that you guys have created. So kudos for that.
Yeah, not perfect, but I think we've evolving in a way that it's interesting. At least we've passed the level where people join their group and say, "Oh, nice, I'm part of a larger group now. I can be paid more, like, and I need that, like, and that." And we've lived through that, like, yeah.
For sure. You mentioned plateaus early on in our conversation. It's something that I think a lot about. Could you talk about some of the plateaus that one you see within the groups, in terms of how are you helping entrepreneurs get through those plateaus? And then also would be really curious to hear your thoughts on like the plateaus that you see as the head of the overall portfolio or house of brands, because I'm sure there was a plateau at 3 acquisitions or 6 acquisitions or 10 acquisitions or 25. Like there's different plateaus and different levels of acquisition and scale. So we're really curious to hear about your experience on those two.
I'm going to talk about at the plateau, the group level in terms of the overall business, but also specifically for e-commerce brand, because that's what we do. Like, so it can happen at the macro and micro level. At the macro level, I would say as you get acquisition, like each year you're buying brands and you accumulate, you're creating debt as well as you're learning. It's easy today after 6-7 years to talk about like what we've learned and how we're operating, but that means that 4 years ago, like the playbook was not as mature. So that means that we did stuff at that time that did create some organizational debt.
What's an example of that?
Yeah, just for example, system stuff that we integrate a business and say, oh, we're going to normalize that part of the data later. We're just going to do like, let's say, revenue marketing. We're not touching, the inventory or the cost of goods. And then eventually, like it just bloat and it takes like 2-3 times more energy to essentially solve it later on versus doing it right at the time. So we're dealing with physical product. That. So anything related to inventory, you need to be very meticulous about it. And early on, that's not something we were essentially doing it. And at some point, you had more brand, and now it started to dislocate. Like, and we're losing proper view. And while we're focusing on the unit economic on one side, inventory is also a big capital drain, like on that side, and you can actually make a lot of EBITDA, like, and still die because you don't control your inventory and the cycle and all that. So I would say, and our specific, trade and building e-commerce portfolio physical product, inventory has been something where at some point it kind of stalled, like the overall growth because of the complexity. Finance normalization as well. You can normalize data at the sales level, marketing level, and all that, but accounting is also something totally different. Like it has its own chart, there's its own rule that needs also to be deliberately normalized. So leaving all sorts of different way to calling the same thing, even if we are doing it at the tech level, if in accounting wise, like we have 4 different way to call return and it's not at the same level. Then you start to mix your financial feedback like as well after. So I said those are more our operational element like finance and ops that it clogs over time and it creates a plateau in the sense that all of those problems, they surface more and more to a point where you're diverted from the growth of the business because you're piled under operational complexity, I would say.
So you end up being more internally focused than externally focused in terms of where you want to be investing capital or customer focus or anything like that. Yeah, definitely. I see those problems sometimes as well.
It's a good way to summarize it.
Yeah, we talk about it as like, obviously we have, daily huddles and weekly meeting, business reviews and stuff like that. And you kind of listen to the patterns of feedback over time from the team. And again, with all good intent, but you start to see, hey, we haven't talked about customer stuff in 5 days, or we haven't talked about strategy stuff in 5 days. And it's like everyone's focused on an accounting issue or a finance issue or a internal review or something like that. That's just like, well, it's necessary, but we want to limit that as much as possible. So yeah.
If we look today, like what are you seeing as the biggest bottleneck for Nolk today? Is it some of this debt from historical processes and decisions? Is it access to capital? Is it the acquisition funnel? Is it organic growth in the brands? What do you see as the biggest bottleneck that you're facing today?
Today, I would say it's more change management in terms of implementing new best practice. Like the world is changing so fast now, specifically in terms of the capacity we have to connect with the customer in a more meaningful way with all the AI tool and Gen AI and all that. And also the change on the acquisition landscape, like, and how do you talk to online customer today? So for me today, that's the biggest thing. So at the end of the month, specifically, we have council where we regroup people with the same trade across the business. And this summer, that's what surfaced as, okay, like how do we optimize our ads? Like it's becoming more and more automated, and the CAC is actually rising. So if we just continue like that, we're just going to cost like more and more to acquire less and less customers essentially. So what do we do about that? So we went to a comprehensive effort, like in the beginning, to share best practice, thing like that. But it's very difficult for people to change, for a team to change the way they've been doing things. And incorporating like those new stuff. At this time, like it's been 10, 15 years, 20 years that there's growth online marketing, like at this point. So there's a lot of people that they've been incrementally evolving, but now we need to make, change of process and implementing new things. So that require to be very deliberate and training and implementing new process. So we've recorded every process from everyone, distill it, come out with, okay, what's the common issue? Okay, like we see that if we increase the quality of our creatives, like the copy, the visuals, we can further, better connect with our customer and target audience. We don't segment enough, like to be relevant to more people. We're using kind of general ads, like across the board. How do you solve something like that? Require a lot of energy. So we're going to do a full day actual workshop with preparation, like, and all that, and then follow up into an entire quarter. And then we're looking for incremental performance on ads across the board. So that's an entire deliberate effort to work on specific, how do we get better creative out there to increase like the efficiency of what we're putting on the marketing. So I would say, if you don't do something as heavy as that as a process, it won't change. We tried the first 6 months of this year with having AI lunch and learn, where someone will showcase thing, we give tool with people, we pay training, but somewhat it seems everybody has a little piece there and there, but it doesn't transform the business fundamentally. So the only way to transform it and say, okay, this is the process we're doing, and we've used principle of product design, let's say like discovery, then find a solution, like then implement it. Like it's very long and deliberate, but I'm sure at the end of the year, we will have developed new muscle, and our customer will be happy, will be better. But during now and then, it will require a lot of energy to shift the organization to really adopt the new scale and I would say targeting opportunity that we have right now in the market versus doing the same thing. Like,
I love the idea of, it sounds like you've moved away from a lot of centralization, but the idea of bringing together group leaders, right, from all of the different units that are in the same role, but within a different unit. That sounds like a great way to experience share and best practice share. And it sounds like just a really great practice. It must be time consuming, right? Like everybody's busy. Everybody has their own day-to-day that they need to manage in terms of their accountabilities. So it needs to be well prepped in order to get a great outcome and ROI on the time. But I love that idea. You brought up the use of AI in some of the brands and some of the business units. What are some of the best use cases of AI that you're seeing today? It's probably the number one question that I get asked by entrepreneurs every single day, every single week. Like, how are you using AI? What are the tips, tricks, hacks? It's on everybody's minds. And so as practical as you can get for the audience, I'd love to hear some of the best use cases that you're seeing.
Well, the most powerful unit that we use case that we're developing at the moment is being able to query the data in a natural language way. I wouldn't say like we're exactly where we want to be in the sense that, I can ask, oh, okay, like what's my most performing ads? And like he's going to show me still the thing that sells the most, not necessarily the one with the best ROAS or so on. Like there's a whole level of training that we need to do, but we have a great opportunity because we've normalized the data. So if you have normalized data, it's about, plugging an LLM and being able to query your data or a large amount of data in a natural way that was not possible in the past. You need to hire a data scientist, like, or a BI person, and say, hey, what should we purchase next season, or what do we have in overstock, or what's the best trend, or I want to optimize that. And then you would have to crunch manually that thing. Now it's possible with AI to essentially feed and get those conversations with the data. So every manager now, if you extract large Excel sheets, like and thing like that, you can essentially like get to very powerful insight that before you had to call a meeting, talk to the BI guy or the data scientist, wait a week or a few days, and get something that is probably not what you were looking for, like in any case. So I think just getting with the scale, the level of precision that you can obtain and the speed at which you can obtain for decision making, for me, that's very transformational, like in our business. The second one that I've explained before is everything that is possible with Gen AI in terms of producing better content faster. So better, faster, cheaper. That's also with what AI is doing. Tiny thing like, for example, Rachel before it would have to do a photo shoot and then film video of people like twirling a skirt or something like that. Now you can have a still and then say, okay, we're gonna pivot like the skirt.
It'll be generated by an AI engine. Yeah.
We define a certain policy that we don't want to use AI model, like given the brand that we're doing, because it would be against like the authenticity factor that we're using. So we're using AI more as a extremely powerful Photoshop, if you want.
So I was chatting with the head of marketing at Goodfood a few weeks ago, and he was showing me, some AI generated ads that you could easily put them up on any Meta platform or any online ad serving engine, and I was amazed to see it. So it's Richard the raccoon, right? That's kind of like the Goodfood ad mascot. And so if you produce like a TV ad in real life, right, on a real set, it could easily cost you over $100,000, right, for like a real traditional TV ad. And then if you go for like user generated content and you're paying out creators and things like that to create ads, maybe it's $10,000 or $15,000 for content, which is which was a revolution at the time when it came out, right? And it was so much more cost effective. And now, if you're able to use an AI, video creator, it's literally minutes it's dollars, right? Not tens of thousands of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you're able to iterate so quickly on it, right? And you're able to say, well, I could put this in market this week and then test it out, and next week I can have a completely different ad or a set of different ads that I'm testing side by side. And that was something that we could have never done before, right? Like it would have been a month-long cycle to be able to work through it, and it would have been 10 times the cost. So that's something that I encourage all e-commerce and pretty much all entrepreneurs to look into. The progress that's being made on the video creation is incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. It's insane. And I would say, or internal creative, now they're spending more time on more strategic stuff. So it's not that like, oh, we're using AI now, we have less people. Maybe we commission through less shoot and external content producer, but we're actually way more thoughtful and strategic with our own creatives. So they spend more time in designing essentially more the strategy and so on. And then you can amplify and scale it using Gen AI tool. So that's the way like to get, I think, the proper scale out of marketing thing. And the customer is on so many different platform format these days and so on that you need to be able to be a little bit everywhere, I would say, and a consistent way, and a coherent way as well. So you got to be harnessing like those tools. Otherwise, you just have a few creative. You're missing on the opportunity for sure.
In talking about the implementation that you guys have done with some of the AI tools, I think this is what you were getting at with your kind of summit around creative and marketing. But one of the things that we talk a lot about internally is, Goodfood's been around for 11 years. There's certain legacy decisions and, tech debt across not only tech, but all different functions in the company. And if I look at starting a business from scratch today, it's like the grass is greener, right? You're like, oh, I don't need to have all these processes and scale issues, and the people do things certain ways. And if we could just, start from scratch and go forward. So it sounded like you guys have tried a bunch of iterations of teaching an old dog new tricks on how to use different tools or different pieces of software. But the best practice so far has just been kind of cold turkey, rip it out, start from scratch, whether it's a new business that you've just acquired or a legacy part of a business that you've had for 5-6 years. It's really just kind of saying like, not another day that we're going to go this way. We're going to go and just kind of do a full reset. Is that really the best implementation strategies that you guys have seen so far, like the most impactful? Because we're thinking about it all the time, and we're very, very focused on making sure that Goodfood is one of the leading companies using AI in the food industry. And one of the conversations I was having just yesterday was the team was, if the pace of AI adoption is, on this curve and we're on the curve below it like this, we're never going to be the best at using it. Like, we need to be at the same curve, and we're already 6 months or 12 months behind whatever the curve is. So we got to be just cutting things and being so quick in our implementation decisions, as long as it's not a huge customer impact or financial impact, that we're catching up to that curve over time. So is that kind of how you're thinking about it as well?
Yes, your curve analogy is perfect. It's just efficiency or productivities, and I'm old enough to have seen like part of the internet curve, like, and the mobile adoption curve as well. So you can see it as well. I remember some conversation. My first business was a web development agency back in 1999, like 2000. So by then, like, you had people still reading like paper journal and say, "Oh, I don't believe in the internet. That thing is, because of the dot-com boom." But yeah, reset is probably too big of a word. Process are kind of a continuum. I think it's replacing existing process with a better process that incorporate AI or those new tools embedded in the day-to-day. People, ultimately, it's the same job. You need to communicate and reach out to the customer and convey the idea. But now, instead of having, let's say, one way of communicating, you can have like 10 different creative, like, to reach out that customer, and you can activate maybe more channel along the way. But in order to do that, you need to change the way you actually work and your sets of tools that you use to work. For example, a couple of years ago, now pretty much everybody in the business is using like Figma and Figma templates and things like that. But if you if you go back like 5 years ago, people were still, okay, Photoshop, open the thing, export. That way of working is not productive enough. Like if you find accept certain case, but people have adopted like, Figma, and now you need to adopt like AI and the copy world and all of those things. So yeah, it's change management, it's tech adoption, but it involves people and technology and sequence and process. And this is way tougher than just say, hey, here's a new SaaS tool, use it, and it's going to be magical. You're going to get 10x. The challenge with AI, I think it's not like that. It's not like putting just a SaaS business, a SaaS tool in the end of someone. It's how you're using it. And yeah, it requires a lot of energy and change management. That's why I'm saying like they say that the technology adoption is always limited by the dragging force or people not adopting it. So the people that will go fast on the market are business that make it natives and implement it in all sorts of sphere of the business. We just adopted it in certain chat like for our customer recently, but not in a way to do customer service, in a way to advise customer in their purchase process, for example. So sometimes you have to test and say, okay, that's a way where AI can actually help the customer like it, but the customer doesn't like it for customer service post-purchase. So pre-purchase, you can leverage AI. Post-purchase, still want to have a degree of human connection. So it's not always the obvious thing, let's put AI everywhere, that actually works.
For sure. We've had customers say, I see it almost weekly in the feedback. Some customers complain that they can't tell if our AI chatbot is a human or not. And I was like,
oh, we get the same thing.
It's an interesting thing to say. Like, that's kind of the point, right? Like, we want it to feel as human as possible, and not every tool is at that level.
Neil, how do you know it's a complaint and not just feedback?
I'm looking at the pattern over time, and the words. There's some level of frustration sometimes in some of the feedback, but let's call it feedback is probably a better term. Yes. Thanks, John, for that.
Well, in the end, everything is feedback, isn't it?
Exactly. Good news, bad news, we'll see. To close this out, Alex, we always like to ask a question around food, given our background. So if you could have a meal with one person, what would you have, and who would that meal be with?
That's interesting. I'm very curious people, interested people in the world. So nailing always like one person and one meal is super, super tough. But I'm going to go super classic. I really love like beer, mussel, and fries, like very Belgian style. So that's kind of a package. It's comforting. You can swap the mussel for cheese. I will do the same. But yeah, astonishing enough, like there's so many great people around the world. But since it's about like scaling and business people, there's one entrepreneur that has been mysterious that I would love to have a meal with. The IKEA founder, Ivar Kamprad. We don't know much, but build an organization that is fascinating, like and gigantic and all that. And yeah, so that would be the person like that. We don't know much about that. I would very much like spend a meal with. Maybe it would be boring, but I don't know. I'm sure it would be interesting.
He sounds a little recluse, but definitely not boring in his in the stories that I've heard. And that's a great one. I recently listened to an Acquired podcast. If you've ever come across that one, they do about 4 hours on IKEA, and they do a lot of background. It's definitely worth the listen, and they go into the early days and how he started and kind of the strategy decisions of the business. So I would highly recommend to you and anyone else listening. That podcast is definitely one I stop what I'm doing, and I always kind of listen to the most recent episode. So.
Wonderful. Just for the business person, I know is controversial on the personal side. So let's dissociate. Let me the other side.
Yeah, we've had a bunch of different people on that scale too. So, well, that's all the time we have today for $100 million Blueprint. Thanks, Alex, for taking the time. It's been super valuable. I think we've touched on scaling companies through acquisition, centralization of functions, decentralization of functions, AI implementation, which I think is on everybody's mind these days. And looking forward to keeping in touch and watching Nolk continue to grow and definitely I'm a fan of the brands. And as we were talking about in the pre-roll, have a bunch of stuff at home, and we'll continue to support there. So until next time, this has been $100 Million Blueprint. Keep building.
That's all for today's episode of $100 Million Blueprint. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. It really helps us spread the word to other entrepreneurs and business leaders who need to hear these stories.
Want more behind the scenes insights, exclusive content, or have a business question you want answered? Connect with us on LinkedIn to find out more.
Also, don't forget to subscribe and follow $100 Million Blueprint, and to share this episode with your network if you found it valuable, because we're all about growing together. Remember, building a business is tough, but with the right blueprint, you can scale authentically and sustainably.
Thanks again for listening. Keep pushing forward, and we'll see you next time on $100 Million Blueprint.